Hi everybody and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. And if you are returning, thank you so much for the continued support. I appreciate you more than you know. If you have not already subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing that and be sure to hit that bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. But for now, let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. Okay, for this project, I have these tulips and these wreath forms that I got on Amazon. If you have interest in any of these items, they are in my Amazon store, which is linked in my description box. But I pulled out the largest of the wreath forms. These are obviously heart-shaped, and this one was a 10-inch. And then I'm taking out a bunch of the tulips. I did purchase 2 packs and they had 20 pieces in each pack. I ended up using about a pack and a half, a little less than a pack and a half. But I am literally just wrapping these stems around the wreath form. I'm lining up the little buds where I want them, and I'm wrapping them around the wreath. Now, if I had to do this over again, I think I probably would trim off the stems. I hesitated to do it because they were honestly so pretty. I was afraid to cut them and then be unhappy with the end result. But as I started working my way around and getting closer to the top of my heart, it was getting a little bit bulky. And so, like I said, in hindsight, by the time I was getting near the end, I was thinking, ugh, I really probably should have trimmed these off and maybe used wire to attach them to the wreath form. So if you decide that you would like to try something like this, that would be my recommendation. You can certainly try and do it this way, but I found that they weren't quite as secure the closer to the top I got because, again, just with the bulk and all those extra stems. But the quality of these tulips I thought was really excellent. I was really happy with them. I thought they were beautiful, and the end result was stunning in my humble opinion. So I'm hoping that you are going to like it too. But as you can see, I just continued on around, made sure that it was to the fullness that I wanted it, and just kept on going around the form. I would love to know what your favorite flower is. I'm not even sure if I know what mine is, but I love irises. I do think these tulips are beautiful, but what is your favorite flower? And I'm looking forward to spring, that is for sure. But here I'm working my way around. You can see that they're kind of, as I try to work in these additional tulips at the top there, you can see they're kind of like pulling away, and I just had to keep going back in and adjusting. So now I'm going to go ahead, and I was kind of showing where I was going to be putting a bow and trying to figure out how large my bow might be and what it might be covering up, so I knew whether I needed to add in a few more tulips. So I'm very visual, and I have to kind of picture how things are going to be as I go through here. But I did use some hot glue at the top there just to try to give it a little bit of extra security. And then I set about making my bow for the top. If you are interested in a bow tutorial, I will link that in the description box as well. I'm not going to bore you with the bow making with the step-by-step here, because I'm sure most of you have already seen me do this a lot. But I went ahead, created my bow, and I'm going to attach it to my wreath. I'm just using the centerpiece to tie it around and get it that nice and secure. I did, again, hindsight's 2020, right? I did wish that I had made the bow a little bit smaller because I felt like I lost some of the heart shape because you kind of lose the top of it, and so hopefully you know what I mean when I'm saying that, but I still thought it was super pretty. Trimming off my ends, just dovetailing those and getting them the way that I want them, fluffing up my bow, and that was it. And so I'm going to create a little hanger now. I basically looped another piece of ribbon and tied a knot, and then I'm going to wrap that around the top of the wreath underneath the bow, loop it through itself to secure it, and then hide that knot behind the bow. So it looks like another loop from my bow that we can use for the hanger, but it's not part of the bow, so it won't put too much strain on the bow itself. Let me know what you think. DIY number 2. So I'm starting out with this heart from the Dollar Tree, and it's kind of cute by itself, but I'm popping off that little metal love, and I'm going to set that aside. I'll keep that for a future project. Taking off the little hang tag, and I'm going to be using the back side of it. I'm going to give it a couple of good coats of my Adirondack white chalk paint. That's by Home Decor. And once that is nice and dry, I'm going to come in with my painter's tape and I'm lining up my stripes on an angle. So I'm going to put that down. I'm going to use another piece of tape as my spacer. I'm sure you all have seen this done before, but just going to go ahead and keep doing that until I work my way across the entire heart with my little stripes. Now I'm going to come in, this is with Elephant chalk paint. This is also by Home Decor, I think. I use Waverly and I use Home Decor, and I always get confused as to which one is which. Actually, this one might be Waverly, but it's Elephant. They're both plaid products, which is why I also get confused. But I'm just painting away from the edge of the tape because I want to try to do my best not to have any bleeding. So just making sure that is all nice and filled in. And then once that was completely dry, I'm going to come in the opposite way. I'm using my little square right there to make sure that my lines are square with my tape, because I want to make sure that I don't end up with diamond shapes. I want actual squares. So I'm just making sure that my tape is getting done perpendicular, and then I went through and I did the same thing that I did before, but just in the opposite direction. And so in those spaces that are not covered with tape, I'm going to come in with my black chalk paint. This one is Home Decor black chalk paint, and I'm just going to fill in each of those squares. And again, as I do this, I am using my paintbrush to brush away from the edge of the tape in towards the center. And it's just because I'm trying not to force paint underneath that tape. So once that was all dry, I went ahead and I peeled away all of the tape to reveal my little stripes. And I find this very satisfying when I pull the tape away and reveal those crisp edges. So I figured I normally fast forward through painting and stuff, but I thought I might share the little reveal here with you for the crisp lines. So once I have all of my tape off, I am going to be coming back in and painting my last checks, if you will. You certainly can come back in once everything is dry and apply tape back over the checks that you've already created. I opted not to do that. I decided I was just going to do my best to do it by hand, just in case I didn't get something lined up properly. I did have a little bit of the paint that got pulled off with the tape. That was the other reason. I was afraid I might damage it. So I'm just touching up the areas that had come up. It was just a little bit here and there. But now I'm going to come in with basically a flat, small paintbrush, and it's fairly firm so that it's going to give me that control for drawing the straight lines along those edges. So I'm just creating my buffalo check. I'm taking my time, making sure that I'm butting up against my black squares and just creating those straight lines that go down from one to the next. And I did that all over the heart. Now there was one edge, I don't know if you see it up towards the top, where I forgot where my line was supposed to be and I started painting more of it. So I'm just going back in with my white and I am touching that up. That's the great thing about paint. If you make a boo-boo, you can just go back and paint right over it. So I've got my buffalo checks. I am loving this already. And then once it was completely dry, I came in with some lamb's ear. This is also from Amazon. If you saw, I did a recent haul for all the stuff that I got off of Amazon, and then those little roses were actually in a Michael's grab box haul from I think it was like last spring. I forget when I did it, but no, fall, I think. It was in the fall. So, but it had spring products in it. So I'm using these items and I'm just going to create I don't even know what you'd call this down at the bottom of the base of the heart, but I'm going to clip off all of the little buds off of my roses. And these were absolutely gorgeous. I was so excited to find these in that box. I did not secure any of those rosebuds down yet. I'm still trying to figure out how I want them. But now I have these, I call these pip berries. I don't know if that's what they really are, but it's basically a little garland, a berry garland that I had left over from the holidays, but I have it in red and also in like a pearlized white. It's almost silvery, but really, really pretty. And I'm just cutting it down into sections of 2 groupings of berries. And I'm tucking that in around the wreath. I had seen something online that inspired me to do this, and I can't remember where I saw it. It was a larger wreath, and it had all of these berry twigs, I guess you can say, coming out around the wreath form in both red and then white. And so mine's a little bit different than what I saw, but I just thought it was sweet and cute and it made my heart happy. So literally and figuratively. So once I had that all done, I'm just trying to figure out where I want to position that on my little wreath sign or heart sign. So I'm getting everything arranged, trying to figure out how I want to place these roses on, and I decided I was going to start tucking them into the lamb's ear, and I just thought that that was so sweet. It's so delicate looking, and I am loving this. So I went ahead and I hot glued everything down into place, just making sure that everything is where I want it. And the lamb's ear does have wire in it, so it does help you to kind of form it into the shape you want. But then just to keep it where I needed it, I went ahead and those top leaves, I did go ahead and adhere them to the backing. And then figured out where I wanted that other little heart. This was from that package from Amazon as well. It was one of the smaller little wreath forms that came in that package of 4. And I secured it to my backing. And now I'm taking one last piece of the berry garland and I'm going to make my hanger with this. So I trimmed off the ends so I could poke it through the little holes that I did not fill in. Those were the original holes from this sign. And then I'm bending it up and twisting it around itself. I decided that was a little too long, so I ended up taking that off and I cut it down. I thought I was cutting it to the right size, and then it was too short. Once I tried to put it back in there, I'm like, oh, now it's too short. So I was like, now what am I gonna do? Because this was all of the garland that I had left. So I'm trying to twist it back together and hoping that it's going to look all right, and it just didn't. So I detached it there and I figured, you know what, I'm gonna just double it up, but a little bit off not completely from end to end. So I did it a little bit off. I don't know, it worked. Let me know what you think. DIY number 3. So I have a love sign from the Dollar Tree, and then this is another piece that I'd gotten in one of those Michael's grab boxes. It was something like $20 originally, and I had gotten that whole box for $5. I had been trying to decide whether I wanted to keep the flower background or if I wanted to get rid of it. So at first I was opting to keep it. And then I'm just painting over with my vintage Victorian. That took, no joke, you guys, about 4 or 5 coats. So it took a while to get that covered with the light pink color. But in the meantime, I went ahead and I used my crimson chalk paint to give one good coat on the love sign. And then on the original frame, I came back in and I'm using my Arteza Gold acrylic paint. I just wanted to brighten it up a little bit. And then I also came in and brightened up the white frame. It just looked a little bit dingy to me, almost like it had been sitting out on the shelf for quite some time, which is probably why it was in my grab box. But I just went over it with some Adirondack white chalk paint and it brightened it up so much. It made such a big difference. I was actually pretty surprised. And so I'm still sticking with the flower background for right now, but I ended up ultimately not keeping it. So as you watch this, let me know what you think of the design and whether you would have kept the flowers or if you would have painted over them. It definitely would have been easier had I painted them before. But now you can see I'm using these little half beads. These are also from Amazon. They'll also be available in my Amazon store. And I'm putting them into a little Ziploc bag, dropping in some paint. And then one of my sweet subscribers had suggested that I add a little water to it. Last time I tried to do this, she had let me know that it works better if you add some water, so I did that. I'm emptying it out onto a paper towel just to get some of the excess paint off. And then I went ahead and I moved them over onto my parchment paper and I just touched them up a little bit with my paintbrush just to make sure that they were nicely coated and smooth and not gloppy. Once those were completely dry, I'm going to bring them back over and place them on my love sign. I got them all the way that I wanted them. And once I had them where I thought that I wanted them, I came back in with my hot glue and got them all secured. And this just makes me happy. I just smile when I look at this. I don't know why. I just think it's fun. So then once everything was set, I went ahead and started to apply it to my sign. And I was still debating with myself over the flowers. I don't know. I thought maybe it would add some more interest. But then when I got this on here, I don't know. It's funky. I guess it could be fun, but it was a little much for me. I felt like maybe it was clashing a little bit. And so I did go ahead and I painted over it with just my Adirondack white. Let me know what you would have done. Did you like the flowers there? Do you agree with me that it was too busy? I don't know. I guess maybe I'm more of a plain Jane kind of girl. So one of my artistic friends might say, oh no, it was fun. And I don't know. I don't have an eye for it, but let me know what you think. And now it's time for a shout out timeout. Beautiful Maggie, this is so pretty. I love it. And Pretty Harriet, some blue Valentine's decor, very sweet. And cute Melba, thank you so much for sharing these with us. And so nice, Iona. I love the Valentine's tree, it's great. I would love to give you a shout out too. If you have interest, please send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 4. All right, I have this piece of molding that I got at Habitat for Humanity for $2. I went ahead and I cut it down with my miter saw, and I'm just cleaning up the edges, making sure everything is nice and smooth, and then I'm going to piece it together. These ended up being about 11.5 inches long each. It was just because that was how my piece of molding was able to be divided. I cut it into 4 equal pieces essentially. And now I'm just using my Gorilla Wood Glue to glue it all together, making sure that everything is nice and lined up to create my frame. Once that was set and dry, I flipped it over and I went ahead with my staple gun and I gave it a couple of staples to each corner just for some added support. So now I'm going to pull out some of my chalk paint. Oh, before I did that, actually, I noticed that it was already a little banged up. So I decided, I'm going to distress it a little bit more. In hindsight, I was kind of wishing that I had done this after I painted it, because the paint kind of didn't go into all those little holes. But I've got my Adirondack white chalk paint and I am just using a chip brush and going over this with a very dry brush to just get it to where I wanted it. I wanted this to look distressed. I wanted it to look older. And so I just kind of went with it until it looked the way that I wanted it. After I used the Adirondack white, I actually did come back in with a second color. I'm pretty sure it was mineral that I pulled out, and you'll see that in just a second. I ended up using the same exact brush, and I did the same process. So here it is, and just went back over it, and it kind of knocked the white down a little bit, also made it look a little bit more aged. But I loved the effect. So hopefully you like it too, but let me know what you think of this. And how do you like to distress things? Do you use the chip brush like this? Do you tend to give it a painting and then go in with sandpaper? What is your favorite way to distress? So now I've got more of these. I've got another one of these little wreath forms, but then also a couple from the Dollar Tree. I ended up not using them. At first I thought I was going to do the trio, and ultimately went with just the one. And I'm looking for a ribbon. I pulled out a silver ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and then I pulled out a few pink ones. Those are all 3 from a pack I'd gotten from Michael's a while back. And I decided pretty quickly that I liked the pink more than the silver for this particular project. So I'm trying to decide between buffalo check or the little stitched or the polka dots. And ultimately I went with the stitched. I just thought that it looked nicest with what I was trying to accomplish. I did consider just tying the bow directly right there, but then ultimately decided that I was going to have more control if I pieced it together. So I'm creating a loop. I'll go ahead and cut that off, and then I'm going to cut a second one the same length so that I am hopeful that I'll have the same thing going on with both of those little bumps in the heart, if you will. So I'm going to loop those over, get them situated. I do like to put my ends underneath each other, like you can see what I'm doing. I kind of fold them over themselves just to make sure I've got clean edges, just in case anything ends up sticking out. And I went ahead and secured that, and then did the same thing on the other side. So just getting my loops set. They were not attached to the frame with hot glue. They're just looped around the top of that frame right now. And then I went ahead and tied a cute little shoelace bow. Tie your shoelace bow, if you want to say, and went ahead and trimmed that off. I was going to trim those tails a little bit more a little later, but I created a second bow that's the same size, and then I'm going to go ahead and secure those to the little loops there, just at the top of where they're secured to hide that seam. So I went ahead and did that on both sides, and then trimmed off all of my little tails. I just think that this is so sweet. I love the way that this looks. So once I had that done, I went ahead and flipped it over, and I decided I was going to secure that ribbon so that the little bows don't end up, sliding around and going elsewhere. And now I just am taking some wire that I had in my stash, and I'm going to create a little hanger. I was able to stick it down through underneath one of those staples on the one side. On the other side, I did end up needing to put in an extra staple because I couldn't get it under there, but it worked out just fine. And I just made sure everything was nice and tight and wrapped around and not poking out. my little wires are poking in towards the wood, so it won't damage my wall. And that's it. Let me know what you think. DIY number 5. All right, I have some wire from Amazon again, and then this burlap ribbon I had picked up from the Hobby Lobby a while back, and I'd gotten it 50% off. I think it was originally $7.99. So I'm just taking this wire, and this is very pliable, and I went ahead and I kind of just eyeballed the length of it. If I had to guess, you know what? I did not measure it. I'm sorry if you'd like to know what the length was. I am so visual, you guys. I'm really bad about measuring things sometimes. If I had to guess, I would say it was probably 4 to 5 feet long. Now, I will tell you, this roll of burlap ribbon that I just kind of, you saw how I kind of wove it onto my wire, that was 15 feet long. It was not enough to do this the way that I had originally planned to do it. I wanted to create a heart shape with this all bunched up. I definitely would have needed a second thing of the burlap ribbon. So I pulled it all off of there, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to weave it in through just the bottom. And I figured by doing that, it was going to gather less tightly. It's still going to be gathering, but it won't need as much material doing it this way as the way that I was doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and weave it all the way through to the end. And once I have the end, I've got all of the ribbon on there. I'm going to just kind of spread it around, make sure that it's nice and even, and then I'm going to trim off that excess wire. So ultimately this was probably more like 3 feet long, I would guess. And then I'm going to twist that wire, and using my little pliers also, just make sure that it's nice and secure. And then I'm going to tuck that down in and under itself so that it's not poking anything. Then I'm going to cover it up a little bit with the burlap fabric or ribbon, and then I'm going to make my little heart shape. So just fluffing that out a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and make a bow for the bottom of that. I've got my Kirkland's ribbon here that I had picked up around the holidays, and again, I'm not going to go through all of the details on the bows, but if you are interested in a bow tutorial, please feel free to check that out. The link is in my description box. And going to get this bow all set to add to my, would you call this a wreath? I guess I'm going to call it a wreath for lack of a better term. But getting this all set, I'll get it all fluffed up, and I'll attach it to the bottom of the wreath. Now, when I did this and attached it, once I had it on there, I felt like it wasn't enough. I felt like this needed something else. I'm fluffing and fluffing and feeling like, you know what, it's just missing something. So I went ahead and I took that off, and I did end up creating a second bow. So here I am just taking it off, and then I pulled out this burlap ribbon. This is also from Kirkland's, and went ahead and created another bow, same exact style bow. And then fluffed that up. Once I had that ready to go, I took the original bow and I attached that to the center of the second bow. So, and that second bow was a little bit larger than the first, and it was a wider ribbon, so it automatically made it a little bit fuller. And then I got that attached to the wreath and fluffed it up. And now I've got the same exact ribbon, but in a narrower width, and I'm gonna create a little hang loop for it. So just trying to figure out exactly how long I want it to be, trimming that off to where I want it, and then I'll just use some hot glue, and I'm attaching it to the area where the wire goes through. So it's nice and hidden, and it's got something pretty solid to adhere to between the burlap ribbon and that wire that's in there. And that is it. Let me know what you think of this one. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the project. If you did, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up and make sure that you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. I sincerely appreciate you. If you would leave me a comment, let me know what your favorite project is. That really does help YouTube to notice my videos, and it helps me to grow. So many, many thanks for your support. Until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.